Extra Points back on the air. Glad to deliver them to you. Gary Nemec with Bill Haisten, a couple of Tulsa World Sports columnists. Thanking you for your attention, whether we're writing something that you're reading or listening to something we're saying. And you can download anything that we say via the podcast, Extra Points Podcast, thanks to our friends at Google, Apple, and Spotify. Bill, I got an OUK State game to ask you about, a TU Ole Miss game, a couple of high school topics that you're writing about this week for the World. But I'll start with any interest you have in rehashing the carnival known as Bedlam's future. Now that the music's playing again.
Right.
And Mike Gundy has taken to reading off prepared notes after practice to let us know that to emphasize, in case he didn't make this point clear at media days in July, that Bedlam is history. Those are his three words. Is there any perspective you'd like to offer on this topic?
No, I mean the shock of it. All of the shock of it was contained within about a 60-day window last summer.
Mm-hmm.
At least for me personally. And so I've kind of, when you really thought about life beyond OU and OSU in the same conference, honestly, Bedlam didn't make a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
On top of, I mean, OSU, I was hearing immediately from the Oklahoma State people that Bedlam was history.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just look at it on both sides and you think, well, OU's getting into a more difficult conference. Do they really want to tack a Bedlam game in as the late season non-conference date? No, certainly not. And do you want to open the season with a game of that ferocity? No, you don't. So, I mean, it's, until it happened to Missouri and KU, and until it happened to A&M and the Longhorns, something like that would have felt unimaginable. But we've seen it. And Austin and College Station are geographically separated, essentially like Norman and Stillwater, and they haven't played in a long time. And their people have gotten used to it. Sickeningly gotten used to it, but got used to it nonetheless. So we're just all going to have to get used to it. It makes me sad. Some of my favorite days of really my career were getting together with everybody in the state for Bedlam, right? Because you see people on the other beat or the other side or whatever. And like the one day a year, you kind of have a reunion of everybody in the Oklahoma sports business. And it's been a one-sided series, but you have to admit that during the Gundy era, it's been a infinitely more interesting series. With a lot of close games, and I can think of 6 Oklahoma State losses, maybe 4 to 6 Oklahoma State losses just since Mike took it over at OSU that could have gone the other way. And so with regard to it being a true, I don't want to hear anybody say it's not a true rivalry because of the one-sidedness of the wins and losses. That's bull crap. It's been a great rivalry. It's really been a great rivalry all along, Aaron, but for real, it's the last 15, 17 years. It's been a heck of a good rivalry with a lot of entertaining games, and I hate to see it go away.
Yeah. Something else Gundy got around to last night, and I don't want to miss this. I don't know who it was in the crowd. I wasn't in Stillwater. I just saw Mike on the replay this morning. I didn't see who asked the question, but it was a pretty astute question about what if networks got involved. And here's the thing, man. If networks are determining the course of college football right now, if media partners are the ones who are sitting at the head of the table when it comes to realignment and are willing, in the case of ESPN and Fox, to the Big Ten and the SEC, if they're willing to pony up not millions but billions of dollars to sort of reset how college football is going to look in the future, well, then it's probably going to be the networks or the broadcast partners who are going to dictate things like rivalry game. I mean, yeah, it can be as simple as Joe Castiglione calling Chad Weiberg, maybe after a couple of years, right, where we've gotten used to the idea of there not being these two schools in the same league, and they realize, this was kind of fun. Maybe we ought to reconsider having it again. Maybe it's as simple as that. I think that's how Missouri and Kansas got back together, as the two athletic directors finally said, enough is enough. Let's work this out. But if you're asking me, and you're looking for a white knight or a knight to ride in on a white horse to sort of rescue this thing, probably going to be someone at ESPN and Fox who noticed how big the ratings for Bedlam were last year. And by the way, they were bigger than the OU Texas game. And they're going to say, there's a pretty damn big audience for this game. And it's going to be worth us shelling out enough money for these two schools not to say no.
Right.
That's kind of where I am.
No, I would agree. It'll be, but if you leave it up to the two schools, just for one side or the other to initiate and for dialogue to happen and for this game to be rekindled, I think you're looking at a minimum of 10 years before that would happen. And, you know, by then, Lord only knows who's coaching at each school and where the program. And although I will say this, Brent Venables is a really young 50-year-old guy, really healthy, vibrant 50-year-old guy. And I can see him being there for a long run. And I could not be more impressed with his first 3 games. It's every measurable is impressive. I love the run game. I don't know why I decided to segue to OU football, but
let's do it. Let's do it.
I love what I saw at Lincoln. It was just a masterpiece of how a road team should go in, how a favored road team should go into a place, a hostile place, and just hit them in the mouth and play beautiful football. Man, the run game. They are, as we speak, and I know it's a small sample size, Garen, but you know, through 3 games, they're averaging 50 yards more per game on the ground, roughly the same per attempt, but the commitment to running it more. I love the balance. I love Dylan Gabriel. I love that there's not any sort of, for the first time in 6 years, you don't have a Heisman guy coming out of the chute of a season, right? You don't have a Heisman favorite or a guy. Now, Gabriel isn't that far down on the odds makers boards right now for the Heisman, but his feels more organic, where instead of just being anointed in midsummer as the Heisman guy or one of, he's just going to play his way into it. But he's been great. They've responded to him beautifully. And, you know, and K-State, not what I expected so far. So, but what was it? 2019? I can't remember. I remember a very recent K-State game where OU blew a big 4th quarter lead and watched K-State win that game in Norman. So you never presume anything with K-State.
Nope, you don't.
They sure seem to lack firepower, and they're 127th in passing, I think is what I saw.
They're getting what I think we all figured they might from Adrian Martinez. I mean, he's a stabilizing figure. He's a solid guy, solid kid, you know, but he's limited when it comes to throwing.
Right.
And I don't know if Colin Klein, the first-year offensive coordinator there, can come up with enough ways to sort of program around him. And it's not like he's ignoring Deuce Vaughn at Martinez's expense, but it's gotten to the point where defenses have figured out that if we key on Vaughn and not let Martinez get crazy with running the ball, we can contain K-State's offense. That's Venables' charge Saturday night, it would seem.
Right. And I should have mentioned, I love what I've seen from the front 7 defense from OU, just the explosion and the speed and the fresh faces and the depth. And I mean, OU is really impressive to me right now. Super impressive. And you know, it's kind of what we all thought. It was kind of what was projected with Brent would be, you know, a return to basics and a return to solid fundamental football. And then if you combine that with the kind of athletes they bring in, then the results should be spectacular, and it's been great so far. And so, but don't fall. I mean, there's been some. When's the last time? Really, seriously, think about this. You'd have to go back to probably before the World War II, and it may have never happened. When's the last time Kansas State had more football talent than OU? Never. So, but has K-State won a few of them? Yep.
Yeah. Right.
So don't presume anything. Don't take anything for granted. And get to the finish line of this one? You know, is it still, it's probably been long enough that it's not any sort of not much personal significance for Brent to face K-State, but you know, maybe a little bit. I don't know. I mean, every game should be personally significant because you got to win them all.
Yeah. I tell you what, another coach who is making sure he has his players' minds right going into Saturday afternoon, or in this case, Saturday afternoon, it's got to be Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, because the way Davis Brin is slinging it around to, especially to Keelan Stokes, but also to Santana.
Love Santana.
Yeah, and I think Malachi Jones. The way that they eventually got to find a run game. They can't keep getting away with having, you know, Brin carry the offense, but the way that guy has responded, and it's not like this is not Ole Miss playing the Egg Bowl. It's certainly not Ole Miss playing Alabama. If the Hurricane can start well in Oxford Saturday, there's no reason they can't be in the fight to the end.
I agree. I mean, and of course, there's a history that tells you that even if TU has a rough first half, they have a history coming back in tough environments like that. But just don't do that. Don't put yourself behind.
Right.
Don't make the kind of mistakes that result in a 17 point or a 24 point halftime deficit when it should have been a 1-score game. Don't do that this time. Just go in there solid. I watched Lane Kiffin's weekly deal. Was that yesterday? I don't remember. I watched it yesterday, but anyway, it was his weekly media get together. And I bet you he mentioned 10 times that Tulsa is the national leader in passing. And he seems sincerely concerned, you know, that this passing attack is going to give us a lot of issues. And so protection will be interesting, you know, pretty immediately when this game starts. See how TU's protection holds up. And like you say, you've got to have somebody. But to Philip Montgomery's credit, he never bails on the run game. I mean, they hammering away at it, even if they're only getting 1.5 yards, 2 yards a pop. And I've seen a lot of games during the Montgomery era where eventually it'll start to open up a little more, and it becomes a reason why they either win a game or stay in a game. So can Davis Brin, who's by far the national leader in passing individually, by far, what is that, 64% Garen, which is good, could be a little better, but good. But what's great is 11-1 touchdowns.
That's the thing. There you go. Yep.
So Davis Brin, this is kind of a legacy game for him. I mean, he could really, I mean, that it's a statement opportunity for sure for Davis Brin. You know, and this would put him in a different place in the national picture, not to mention on the NFL evaluation boards for his next life. So big game. Can't wait to watch it.
Yep.
To me, it's probably the most compelling game of the week.
Yeah, well, and whatever happens, I haven't seen anything from anyone outside of TU in the American Athletic Conference to lead me to think that there's no playoff crasher in this league this year. Cincinnati just isn't the same. Houston is, boy, happy for Kansas to have started 3-0. It's great to see after all the years of misery they've had up in Lawrence for there to finally be hope. But goodness gracious, I don't imagine that's the storyline in Houston this week. And with Holgerson's rough start. So opportunity here for TU, win or lose moving forward. You have really interested.
I texted, I was in a group thread with some guys.
Yeah.
Who were, all fired up about the Kansas game. And a couple of them are, well, one of them in particular is a Jayhawk for life, you know, kind of guy.
Right.
I asked him if, after they rallied to beat Houston the other day, you know, they looked a little bleak early because they were down 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, right.
And I asked him, who will be your interim coach for the bowl game? And he writes back, you know, ha, ha, ha. But isn't it interesting, though, that a Kansas coach is having who was trending in a good way anyway last year,
Right.
and now has this kind of a season going at the same time that Nebraska's looking for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
We'll
see.
Yeah,
We'll
will
see.
see. But are you not invested in Kansas with this guy? Is it Leipold or Leipold? I hear
Leipold, Lance Leipold. Yeah.
I thought it was Leipold, but I heard a network Sports Center guy called him Leipold. So it's Leipold. Yeah, I am fully invested in him as a for real guy. He's impressive.
If he gets a Nebraska job, we'll all know how to pronounce it.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
We'll see.
Hey, listen, and he got extended last week. Did you see the terms of that deal? I mean, the final year of his deal, Garen, is 27, and he will be paid $3.5 million that year.
Yeah, I know.
The money peaks on his new contract extension, and Nebraska will pay him $5.5, $6 million to make that move, and $3.5 million is half of what Gundy's making in Stillwater right now. So he's an affordable rising star, very impressive coach. So good for. They're the team of the year so far, for sure.
So far, he's national coach of the year, and they could go 3-9. He still might be national coach of the year. We'll see. Hey, you've got, speaking of coaches, you had a chat with a guy that I know a lot of your readers and a lot of our listeners will be familiar with. That that I think folks are going to want to check out the column that becomes from that chat. Tell us about that and about what's going on at the OSSAA and crowd control, because that also is very interesting.
Right. Well, the OSSAA, in response to some stuff that's been going on and to an incident, not directly to an incident that happened in March, but there was an incident that happened in March at the state basketball tournament. And so the OSSAA passed legislation during the summer in June, and basically it's a 2 strikes and you're out rule. And I'm writing about it for tomorrow's section. And basically, if there are 2 egregious acts committed by anybody associated with a team in any sport, 2, that team's season is done. They're finished. And if it happened to be in a state semifinal game where the 2nd strike occurred, you just forfeit the championship game. You're done. So what the hope is, like David Jackson told me, we the association hope we never ever have to put a 2nd strike on anybody. And so far, since school started, 1 team in the state, 1 team in 1 sport in the entire state of Oklahoma has an egregious act violation on its book. And so if they get a 2nd one, and it's not anywhere near Tulsa, and it's softball, just for the record, but if that team happens to get another egregious act, and an egregious act, how do you define that? If a parent jumps the fence and threatens an umpire, or if an orchestrated chant from a student body is particularly vicious and personal, and continues after they've been told to stop, that would be an egregious act. If a coach takes a swing at a referee, you know what I mean? I mean, this is beyond garden variety flare-ups. And so and the association is on the brink of trying to really crack down on profanity on the fields and courts of Oklahoma high schools. So and they know that's a tough deal. And we're not talking about cancellations of seasons on that front. We're talking about 15-yard flags.
Okay.
They do want to clean it up. And some of the officials referees I've talked to said, you cannot believe some of the stuff we're hearing on the field now. And they just want to clean that up. And that's not a cancellation of the season. That's an unsportsmanlike that'll hurt your team in the moment. And they hope that they'll get the coaches' attention and trickle down to, hey, guys, sort of like targeting. It took years for guys to kind of get used to that, even though that's still a funky, the enforcement of targeting is still funky. And I thought the Deshaun White got jacked. That was a terrible call the other day. Yeah, so there's that for tomorrow's paper. And then for Friday, I went to Sepulpa's practice yesterday, September 20th, and it was 99 degrees. Like, this is miserable. Oh my
Mhm.
God, so hot. And
Today's worse.
yeah, well, that's right. But I'm not out in it today. But so David Alexander, the former Broken Arrow coach, coached BA to its only state championship in 2018 in football.
Mhm.
And 2 years to the day after he and the Tigers won that championship, he was dismissed from that job. And so he now, last season, he was a special teams coach at Jenks, won his 6th state championship ring with Jenks last year. And now he is the offensive coordinator and O-line coach at Sepulveda.
Wow.
And I saw him, and
No idea.
a longtime longtime Bixby coach who preceded, he was Laura Montgomery's predecessor at Bixby. He also is on that staff. He's coaching the linebackers. So Tim Holt, the head coach, who's a young head coach, has, 62-year-old Pat McGrew and 58-year-old David Alexander, accomplished head coaches.
Wow.
As on his staff over there. So I saw them scrimmage in Bixby in August and thought I should go see these guys in a few weeks and talk with David, catch up with David, because I really hadn't talked with him much except hello, now and then. And but it was interesting, and I asked David, to reflect on what went down at BA, and I asked, do you still have scar tissue from that situation? And he said, I still have a wound from that situation.
Gosh. Wow.
So there'll be more. I mean, I'll let him elaborate.
Yeah.
But yeah, that situation seemed to have broken his heart, and it's been almost 2 years since that.
Gosh.
Unbelievable. I'll never forget that morning when I got that text that they had made that move against David, and I just thought, I don't believe it, and make a couple of calls and find out, in fact, that it's true. So, but anyway, that's what we got coming up Friday, and as far as big games go, the game I think I will go see Friday, Garen. Muskogee is this close to being a Kansas type story.
Mm-hmm.
They're 3-0, and with Travis Hill, and they play at Sand Springs Friday night. Sand Springs pretty good. I went to see them. Isn't that crazy though, that you can get beat 67-3 by Bixby and still be considered a state contender?
Right.
Springs is a state contender at 6A2. They're pretty good. That's just Bixby is on a, they play at Norman North Friday. That's interesting. They haven't played it. Bixby Spartans haven't played in Norman in a long time, and yet they go to Norman North, and so people in Norman can get their first look at the Bixby dynasty.
They're not going to like it. They're not going to feel good Saturday morning about, I'm afraid.
I was tempted to go that game just to see what it looks like, because I mean, it's just like, I think until you get a taste of it, you just don't believe it.
Yeah.
I don't think the OSSAA people believed it, that what they were about to experience. And I thought Bixby came out with a physicality that just stunned OSSAA. And you see it week after week after week and for years now. And so Bixby takes that physicality and that, they're so well coached. So I'll be interested to see if that's a typical 59-13 game, or if Norman North can, reinvent the wheel and find a way to like really stress Bixby. Nobody else has in a couple of years.
Man, you see Travis Hill and Pat McGrew. You're taking us back now.
Yeah, Travis Hill is one of the all-timers who I want to go to Muskogee and spend an afternoon with Travis too. But he's one of those guys who had a setback and he got back into it. And I can honestly say, I mean, you talk to these coaches and you find out who in that fraternity is like really well liked and respected, and who's beloved and who ain't beloved. And Travis Hill, I mean, seems universally loved in the coaching profession. And so I know a lot of guys are rooting for him to have a special season at Muskogee, except for Bobby Klink, who has to face him.
Yeah, right.
But that'll be a good game. I mean, it's just, if you just look at Bixby's scores and you look at the other side of it, you might think, oh man, that other team isn't very good. You can't, Bixby is such a different metric.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, they're going to beat the crap out of most teams. And I mean, you can't just like sweep the other team away because it's Bixby. I can't wait for the 6A1 postseason. I can't wait. I can't wait for all the postseason. And I can't wait to watch OSU at Waco next week.
Yeah. Well, it won't be 9-5 or
OSU's lost 4 of their last 5 in Waco. I mean, it's time to go win. And 2 years ago when they won 42-3, that Waco team was, that Baylor team was in disarray, right? And so, boy, if Oklahoma State can go down there next week and beat a fully loaded, ready to go Baylor in Waco, I'm really impressed. So,
well, I know an OSU quarterback. You mentioned the Heisman race being a little more open this year. I know an OSU quarterback who might find himself on a few of those lists if he goes to Baylor, puts up 350 and 3 or 4 touchdowns, and the Cowboys beat the Bears.
Oh, every week Sanders is taking steps to open doors for himself after Stillwater.
Hey, real quick, I got a Pat McGrew piece of tribute for you. When I was dating Christy, my wife, in high school here, I would go with her over to Lance Park, just off of 244, and watch her dad play fast pitch softball for the Firebirds, who, if anyone has any remembrance of the glory days of fast pitch softball in Tulsa, they know when I say Firebirds, that's like royalty. This was the team. Pat McGrew was a teammate of my father-in-law's on a few of those teams. So next time you see him, you'll have to ask him last time he swung a bat.
I don't know. You know what he looks like right now? He looks like an athlete.
So he's probably still swinging it.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, if you handed him a bat and he stepped in the box, I bet he'd hit it. He looks great, and he and so does David. I mean, it's really amazing. David Alexander retired from the NFL at 288 pounds. Now he weighs like 225. And if you said that guy's a former athlete, at least a lot of people would look at him and think maybe he was a retired basketball forward. I mean, but yeah, Pat McGrew looks great. Had a great time, and so we'll see. It's Sepulpa has a chance to. They should actually win. They go to Durant, and they'd be 3-1. So there's a lot of storylines, but well, as we get deeper into mid to late October, and you got a Jinx Bixby game coming up on the books, and holy moly, it's gonna be crazy.
It'll be interesting again before long, and the best part is it won't be again 95 in the shade. Hopefully by playoff time.
So. Apparently, allegedly, so I remember like a month ago we had a little cool spell, and they said, the really searing heat is done for the year, and crap, here it is. So, but I'm hearing that by this time, the next time you and I are together here, that the weather should turn and stay turned, and that we'll actually surge into fall. And so I'm ready for it. I've never complained about weather much, but September 20th, and I asked my phone, what's the temperature? And she says 99. And I'm like, so upsetting, so mad. Anyway, what a baby. I wasn't even out there in pads. I'm just watching.
I know.
Which I don't complain out loud and in the moment, because then everybody's gonna look at you like you blankety blank.
Yeah, but they're 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, right?
Now the coaches aren't.
Yeah, that's true. I assume they're not padded up, but yes, they're working a little harder than the bystanders who go out from the media and watch practice.
And Ian, I was doing less than anybody on the field in that moment.
Yeah,
I'm watching. Ian was running around getting pictures. The man in black.
The man,
black jeans, black t-shirt, 99 degrees, and got great art. So
we need to bring Ian on our podcast sometime. There's the guy that there's the behind the scenes guy that makes it happen for us, is Ian Mall. We'll introduce Tulsa to Ian sometime. All right, enjoy the football this weekend. I will be in Norman. Sand Springs, is that where you said you're going to be? Maybe.
I think so. I think I'll go to Muskogee Sand Springs. Yep.
Okay. All right. And we'll be back next Wednesday to deliver the goods again, courtesy of Google, Apple, and Spotify. This has been Extra Points, proud service of Tulsa World Sports columnist Bill Haisten and Garen Emig.